Have you ever finally decided to do something for yourself and instead of feeling good about it, you end up feeling super guilty? Maybe you take a day to rest and you immediately start thinking about everything that you should have gotten done that day. Maybe you say no to someone and then you spend the next few hours wondering if they're mad at you and if you were just being selfish. Maybe you make a decision based on what you actually really want, but then you suddenly feel this super uncomfortable feeling in your body like you've done something wrong. You might even know logically that you're allowed to take care of yourself. You're allowed to have boundaries and say no. You're allowed to rest and take care of your own needs. And yet putting yourself first can still feel so deeply uncomfortable or even impossible. If that's you, I want to talk about what's actually happening underneath this pattern and how to reprogram it and heal it so that putting yourself first can start to feel natural and easy. Plus, at the end of this video, I'm going to be guiding you through a practice where you can connect to that version of yourself who puts yourself first without guilt. So what's actually happening here? When putting yourself first makes you feel super guilty, the real problem underneath is that somewhere along the way, you learned that taking care of yourself came with a big cost. But before we talk about that, we need to talk real quickly about self-abandonment a little so that you can understand this pattern more deeply. Self-abandonment is when you repeatedly disconnect from your own needs, feelings, desires, boundaries, or inner truth in order to maintain connection with other people. It can look really obvious, like putting everyone else's needs first, even when it comes at your own cost, or more discreet, like going with the flow and not speaking up, not telling people your needs, your desires for the sake of keeping the peace. It can look like not saying what you actually want, what you actually need, what you actually feel in the moment. It can look like overgiving and people-pleasing and absorbing the inconvenience and the discomfort or even the pain to focus on what others want or need. On the surface, this can feel really virtuous. It can make us feel like we're being kind and caring and considerate and compassionate people because you're the one making the sacrifice. So it can feel like you're the one doing the loving thing. But when you live this way over and over and over again, especially, you're constantly putting everyone else's needs before your own. And there's a big cost with that. When you keep absorbing the cost, resentment, anxiety, and even health problems can grow inside of you. And it also causes you to become more and more disconnected from yourself and less able to live your life in the way that you actually want and need and what feels good to you. And therefore, connected to being able to create that life because you're not connected to your own wants and needs in the first place. And now some people are going to question here me specifically bringing up that this can cause health issues, health problems. So I want to take a moment to talk about some of the studies that have been done on this. There is a body of research on the theory of specifically self-silencing by psychologist Dana Jack. Self-silencing is essentially the tendency to suppress your own thoughts and feelings and needs and desires, all of those things in order to maintain relationships or avoid conflict and put other people's needs before your own. For example, researchers studying women with fibromyalgia found that putting other people's needs before their own was associated with greater symptom severity. Research has also linked self-silencing and suppressing your own needs and feelings with cardiovascular problems. And one 12-year study found that people who more frequently suppress their emotions had a 70% higher risk of dying from cancer during the study period. So This does not necessarily mean that being nice causes cancer, but it does mean that continuously suppressing yourself and your emotions and your experience can be associated with real changes in your body and real potential health consequences. And I don't share this to cause fear. I share this for two reasons. One, to validate that, that those feelings are causing anxiety. Most likely, that's valid. And a lot of the times when we're experiencing these certain things, we feel really anxious and we don't really recognize what's going on. So this pattern can totally cause anxiety. And then two, I wanted to bring this up to help inspire you to understand why healing this pattern is so important. And not to worry, we are going to talk about actually how to heal this pattern later, just a bit later in the video. But these research findings make sense when you think about what you're actually asking your body to do when you self-sacrifice. When you don't listen to your own needs, your own feelings, your feelings and desires and needs, all of those things are your personal guidance system trying to help you navigate living your life in a way that is aligned with your best good. So when you're constantly overriding your own signals by swallowing your anger or ignoring your tiredness, pushing through exhaustion, saying yes when you really want to say no, staying quiet when something hurts you or makes you feel uncomfortable, any of those things, when you're ignoring that, you're really just taking care of everyone else while giving yourself the message that your needs don't matter or your needs don't matter as much as someone else's. And that's just simply not true. And the fact that you even struggle with this pattern means that you are a kind, caring person, most likely, who never would use your own desires to bring harm to someone intentionally. So it's time that you stop letting this guilt and putting other people first keep harming you. So let's now get a bit more clear on where this pattern started, and then we'll talk about how to heal it. This pattern is rooted in survival that goes back to childhood. That's why it's really not as simple as a lot of advice that you may hear that just tells you to have better boundaries or stop being a people pleaser. Where this pattern comes from is really deep. A lot of self-abandonment begins with what happened in your early relationships. So as children, we learn who we are partly through how the adults around us respond to us. When a parent or caregiver is attuned to you, they notice your needs, and they notice when you're tired, overwhelmed, scared, angry, and they make space for your emotions, and they help you understand what you're experiencing. That's one experience. But when the adults around you aren't able to consistently attune to you in that way, you can start learning to instead attune to them. You become very aware of their moods and their needs, their reactions, and what they expect from you. You learn to read the room and adjust yourself. You learn what versions of you gets the most connection or approval, and which ones don't. And over time, you can lose that natural connection to your own needs because you became so focused on understanding everyone else's and attuning to their needs instead of having your needs recognized and honored as equally important. So instead of growing up with the internal feeling of thinking, what do I need? Maybe you grow up automatically asking, what does everyone else need from me? And then that is the way that you learn to feel good and safe. But your own needs never disappear. They just get shoved down in all of that. And deep down resentment and other issues, like we talked about before, anxiety, even health issues, those things can grow. And that's one of the roots of self-abandonment. You learn to look outside of yourself for what was safe and acceptable and wanted because the people around you weren't consistently helping you develop that connection within yourself. And you learn to put everyone else's needs before your own. And if you adapted this strategy, it was actually really smart. It was you're smart internal self learning how to survive and how to take care of yourself within those conditions. And that's its own issue, right? But the compounding issue of this pattern really keeps coming as you grow up and you no longer have those adults around you telling you what to do. You don't really need that anymore because you already have this programmed into you to put other people's needs first. This natural behavioral pattern adaptation keeps repeating because of the underlying beliefs that stemmed from your past experiences. The pattern is still there and shows up as you scanning for what other people need, overriding your own needs to avoid the guilt of disappointing someone else, or the confrontation or issue, potentially, of disappointing someone else. And the guilt can be really strong because you learned early on that it was your job to adapt to everyone else and that putting yourself was wrong or selfish, whether you learn that directly or indirectly. But this pattern is silently costing you so much, right? We already talked about resentment, anxiety, because you're giving yourself that message that your needs aren't important and won't be prioritized. So then that anxiety and those feelings of uncomfortableness just get louder and louder, hoping for you to finally hear and pay attention. And on the other side of listening and paying attention and that healing this pattern, on the other side of that, it's actually you coming back to yourself and experiencing your life very differently. You can care about other people while also caring about yourself just as much. You can ease your anxiety by no longer constantly scanning and monitoring what other people need and how they feel, and tune into yourself so that those feelings of anxiety, that voice inside, doesn't have to keep getting louder and louder to try to get your attention. You can say no without spending the rest of your day feeling like you've done something wrong, and set a boundary and let someone be disappointed without immediately abandoning yourself to go in and try to change the situation and try to make them feel better. You can make decisions based on what you actually want instead of what is going to keep everyone comfortable or happy with you. And over time, you start trusting yourself more. You become more aware of your own desires and more deeply connected to yourself and your sense of self-love and self-respect. Your boundaries become a lot clearer in all of this too. And the thing that all of this really boils down to, that I think is the most important, is that you can prioritize the things that you want and need in life and have more room for your own joy. And I think one of the most beautiful parts in all of this is that you don't have to become less caring to experience that, to heal all of this. You can still be deeply compassionate and generous and show up for the people that you love. And you can do this in a more genuinely joyful way because you're no longer doing it at your own expense and then feeling resentment under the surface. You start including yourself in the decision and become someone who knows that you matter too, right? Not just intellectually, logically, but actually reprograms the patterns that you do and the ways that you behave and take care of yourself. And actually see the proof of that repatterning, that healing, that reprogramming in your life. So how do you heal? How do you reprogram? You begin by turning your attention back towards yourself. You start asking yourself, what do I need? What do I want? What do I feel? What feels good to me? What doesn't feel good to me? And actually listen to those answers. And that sounds really simple, but if you've spent years automatically prioritizing everyone else, it can be super uncomfortable at first. And that's where the guilt can be very strong. Even if you don't have other people guilting you, you have this sense of internal guilt. Because part of healing this pattern is actually doing the hard thing that you've been doing. You've been avoiding choosing yourself, even when someone else might be disappointed. So instead of keeping on avoiding it and keeping in this pattern and keeping on reinforcing this pattern, you have to start doing something different. Maybe that means you say no. You don't over-explain. You let someone else have their feelings about it and you sit and breathe through that discomfort without rushing in to try to rescue it or say, oh no, never mind, to try to keep the peace. So when that guilt comes up, you remind yourself that you didn't do anything wrong, that their disappointment does not mean that you hurt them or that you're bad or wrong. And you reassure yourself by remembering that your needs are equally as valid and important. And it's not your job to take care of other people. It's your job to take care of yourself first. And over time, you start teaching your nervous system and those old beliefs that live in your subconscious mind. You start teaching those things that choosing yourself is actually safe, which you'll also get a chance to connect to that feeling here in a few moments when we do the guided practice. Because these patterns aren't just conscious decisions. They've been practiced over and over and over and over again, often for years with deeply rooted beliefs holding them in place, right? Like we talked about in childhood. So that's why I created the Releasing People-Pleasing Hypnosis. It's a 21-day journey, and it's designed to help you work with those patterns. Work to reprogram those deeper patterns underneath the behavior. And it helps you begin releasing the need to constantly accommodate other people and the belief that you have to put everyone else first to be loved. Because as you already likely know, it's not just as easy as telling yourself, well, I need to stop people pleasing. If you're watching this type of a video, you probably already consciously know that. You probably already consciously know that you want to stop putting other people first. And that's great that you already know that. But these patterns are rooted in your subconscious belief system. And those things, the patterns are on your needs, your worth, your boundaries, your right to prioritize yourself. And hypnosis, I love because it directly works with your subconscious mind, which is actually the part of your mind where these patterns and associations have been stored. When you learned them, they were stored there. Even when you're making a conscious decision, they are still influenced by these beliefs that live in your subconscious mind. And so this hypnosis can help make the healing process a lot faster and easier. And if you're ready to go deeper with that type of healing, you can find the Releasing People-Pleasing Hypnosis linked in the description below. Okay, now it's time for that guided practice. So I invite you to get comfortable and gently, if you feel safe, to close your eyes or soften your gaze while I guide you through a short practice to connect to that version of you who chooses herself with greater ease. So go ahead, and I invite you to close your eyes and just start by taking a few deep breaths. Feel your body being held by the chair. And imagine that you're sitting in a movie theater. It's perfectly safe and you're the only one in there. And as you sit in this movie theater, you notice up on the big screen that there is a video of you. And first, you see this video of you as you have currently been living your life. You see the last time that you really wanted to say no to someone and the discomfort that you felt in that moment. And then you hear yourself saying, yeah, sure. And you notice and you feel the anxiety maybe inside, the tension inside. Noticing how hard it is for you to stay with yourself in these moments. And noticing this with so much self-compassion, knowing where this stemmed from, that this stemmed from a survival pattern, your system learning how to take care of you. and noticing that it's not working for you anymore. And now you're an adult and you have the power to change these patterns. And now notice that you have a remote control in your hand. And you hit the fast forward button and you see this movie speed up and go to some point in the future. And you press play and you see yourself at some point in the future after you have done so much to heal and overcome this pattern. You see yourself in a similar situation. Someone's asking you something. And this time you notice how, before you respond, maybe you take a deep breath. You check in with yourself and how you're feeling. You notice that your body, your mind is saying, no, I don't want to do that. And you take a deep breath. And with ease and confidence, you say, no, I won't be able to do that. And you notice how saying that feels in your body. Maybe it still feels a little shaky at this point, but so much more easeful than it used to. Maybe this person even starts to share their disappointment and you start to feel a little guilty. Maybe you even notice that urge to want to give in and change your mind, change your answer. But instead, you don't over-explain. You don't give in. Instead, you see this future version of you say, I'm so sorry that you're disappointed, but I still won't be able to do that. Thank you for respecting my decision. And you notice her take a deep breath. And even if that other person isn't still respecting your decision, you feel deeply that you respect your decision. You notice how differently you were able to handle that situation, and you feel so proud of yourself. You see yourself walk away from that scenario. And maybe not everything is perfect. Maybe you still feel a little sticky in all of it. But instead of walking away feeling guilty and bad or anxious, you feel proud of yourself. And just taking a deep breath to notice this feeling, to feel this feeling in your body. And then when you're ready, can bring your attention back to the movie theater, back to your back, your legs being supported by the physical chair in the physical room that you are currently in. And you can gently bring yourself back and open your eyes. Welcome back. If this video brought up something for you, I hope that you take with you that putting yourself first doesn't make you selfish. Your needs and desires are just as important as anyone else's, and you can still be caring about other people while prioritizing yourself. You can love someone and still have boundaries. You can let someone be disappointed without abandoning yourself. And in doing this, you can learn to trust your own needs again. Take care of yourself in a new way. But the deeper healing isn't just about understanding all of this intellectually, it's about doing the real work to reprogram those deeper patterns inside. So whether you do that on your own or through the advice that I gave in this video with someone else, or with me inside the Releasing People-Pleasing Hypnosis, I'm sending you lots of love and support on this powerful step in your healing journey. I'll see you next time.